All right, review lesson number 6 today. We're going to pick up where we left off. This is number 28 from the June 2019. We're going to go all the way up to 37 and talk about scoring procedures in the meantime. So for number 28, the answer is plus or minus 6. Plus or minus 6. You just wrote 6. I mean, it does say the word algebraically. Yeah, this isn't a crazy amount of work. My work is 2 lines. But we do want to show some process. If I just wrote plus or minus 6, maybe 1 point. If I just wrote positive 6, 1 point. If you had no idea what to do and you got something crazy, then we're looking at like 0 to 2. How do you know when it's supposed to have a plus or minus? So anytime, the only time you shouldn't have a plus or minus is if it's like maybe like a word problem where you're like, oh, find out this person's age. Then I'm not going to write like plus or minus 6. If it just said to solve it, assume the negatives can happen, plus or minus 6. Word problems and things like that, real world situations, are the only time where we don't really consider negatives, so we don't really care about it as much. Okay? So what did I do here? I didn't even show my work very clearly, but I did show algebraic process. I divided both sides by 5, took the square root. When you take the square root property, plus and minus. Okay, good with that one? Like I said, if you just wrote 6 and you forgot about plus and minus, give yourself a 1. I'm assuming that was the common error here. Okay, this one was kind of weird. So what topic was this one getting at? Number 29. This is getting at average rate of change. Or if you want to give it a more comfortable name, like slope, right? This is talking about slope. But the weird thing here was like the x values were time. So you had to be careful with like, hey, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. isn't a difference of like 3, right? 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. you want to think like how many hours is that? So 7, 8, 9, 10. So just be careful of the hours here. I kind of set up and showed my work. So I said 1 a.m. to noon is 11 hours, right? And it changed 32 inches in those 11 hours because it was 1 to 33. So I just did that math in my head. 32 over 11 is about 2.9. For 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., that's 9 hours. You can count it out if you need to. And that change was 25 inches. There I'm looking at the 11 to 36. So it's very close, 2.9 to 2.8, but I did want it to know the greatest rate. So 1 a.m. to noon should be your answer. If you just wrote, we've talked about this a lot. If you just wrote 1 a.m. to noon and you have really nothing else, that's a 0. You don't get credit for the fifth. This was a 50-50 guess at the end of the day. You could get a 1 out of 2 if you said 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is obviously wrong, but maybe you made a slight error. You wrote 25 over 8 or something, something that made it win all of a sudden. So you could get it wrong and still get a 1 out of 2 versus like, oh, I wrote 1 a.m. to noon. How come I'm getting 0? Because you didn't show anything else. So don't think just because your final answer is wrong that you get like a 0. If you had 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. and you're like, oh, I put the wrong number here, that could be a 1 out of 2. Kind of gauge it yourself from there if you made a slope error somewhere in your calculation. Questions with this one? Yeah, not everything's going to work out perfectly. Okay. This one was funny because I'm thinking back to a student I had this year. And you guys might even be like, maybe someone in here made this mistake. This question has been so common with solving for R that they made it like a lot more complicated. Solving for H is actually pretty easy because you could divide by pi r squared once you get rid of the 1/3 and you're done. I was like proctoring that student's room and he was writing like the full page, and after the test I was like, dude, what were you doing for number 30? And it's like, oh, I was doing this formula and plugging in this. He just misunderstood it and made the problem into something that it wasn't, right? He was like trying to do something crazy. I don't know what he was doing, like a system at some point. I was like, what were you doing, man? Solving for H, how do you get rid of pi r squared if it's being multiplied? Divide by pi r squared. When it says explain or justify, does that mean? Yeah, so traditionally justify is like more like basically show your work. They don't say show your work, so they're gonna say justify. Explain is usually more in words, but sometimes explain can kind of be both, if that makes sense. We'll see. Let's look at an example where that comes up, Rachel. Explaining never for math, and as someone that's graded Regents in the past, I don't want to be, we're grading hundreds of papers and stuff. We don't want to read like 2 paragraphs. So it's, even if it is in words, it's like as minimal as possible. Like a bullet point of like, 3 words could be an explanation. Okay, good with this one? Did anyone do the same thing what I was just describing? Like you were trying to do something weird for R, or you thought this question was a lot harder than it was? It's kind of hard for me to say what's a 1 here. I guess maybe if you have some slight mistake. I really have a slight mistake in a question like this, though. Let me pull up the model responses. Okay, questions with this one? We're good? For 31, okay, we talked about this in the Do Now today, recursive formula. So let's, before we even look at the answer and stuff, let's break down what this is saying in words. This is saying, hey, the first term of this sequence is 3. And to go from one term to the next, see where it says n minus 1 and then n on the left? That's saying like the previous and next, right? One after the other. You add 1 and then multiply by 2. And I like to create like a little assembly line of sorts. So you have to find A2 first. You plug in A1, which was 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, times 2 is 8. Then you plug in the 8. You get 18 after you do that rule. Plug in the 18, you get 38. So I wanted to know the second, third, and fourth term. I would probably just write it a little bit, clearer than I did, like 8, 18, 38 maybe. Okay, 8, 18, 38. I think you get a 1 out of 2 if you needed to get, let me just double check on the model responses. I don't remember the answer key off the top of my head. How can you get a 1 out of 2 on this? How can you get a 1 out of 2? Okay, so if you get 2 of them, if you got 8 and 18, but you somehow messed up with the third one, you can get a 1. Yeah, you need to get a minimum of 2 of them. So if you're like, oh, I got 8, but then the other 2 are wrong, that's still a 0. They required a minimum of 2. So if you wrote 8, 18, and 40 or something, you got a 1. Kind of annoying, but yeah, you need to get 2 to get a 1 here. What if you get all 3 of them right, but you write the answer again and circle it? Huh? What if you get all 3 of them right, but you write the answer again and circle it, but you get that answer wrong? Oh, you miswrote it? And sometimes the teacher will like count that as a transcriptional error, like, hey, he just literally copied down the wrong thing, and they might like kind of look the other way. But that's something that you would just check over. All right, another question where CTS is required, and we've learned this topic. This was a lesson, right? There's a method to everything. Why did we do a lesson on vertex form and stuff? This is why. We add 1 to both sides. So that's the magic number. That's because half of b is -1. Square that is 1. So that's why I'm adding 1 on the left and right. The bubble is always going to be half. So as -2, it becomes -1. And then we subtract 9 from both sides, putting it back in like that f of x equals look. And I forgot to mention, the first move was to bring 8 to the left to get rid of the constant. And now your vertex is going to be 1, -9. Your Regents looks exactly like this. Like how we're doing it is how you would do it. You like write it right on the paper. The bubble sheet is just for multiple choice. Okay. Let me see the points for this one. This is a kind of annoying for a 2-pointer. Points for this one, you had to write it. What the heck? Okay, did anyone do this? So they give examples, and I've shown you guys, they're called model responses. If you solved this for some reason, you thought it was saying like solve for 0, and the answers are, I believe, 4 and -2. If you solved it, you get a 1 out of 2. So if you solved it, you kept going and you're like equals 0, t-chart, blah, 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 you get a 1 out of 2. If you wrote the vertex wrong, so maybe you put like, you switched -9 and 1, you made like a IHOP mistake, but all your work is correct, another 1 out of 2. Ooh, okay, this is a good example. This is kind of being generous. I'm looking through the model responses. If you just wrote down the vertex if you just wrote down the vertex, they're giving you a 1 out of 2. So you didn't do any CTS work. Maybe you just copied a table and said, like, here's the symmetry. They gave a 1 out of 2 if you just wrote down the vertex. CTS is not on the formula sheet. I mean, there's not much of a formula to know. It's just half of b squared. Half of b squared. Why did you cross it over? I'm not sure what that means. Okay. For 33, we're starting with 4 pointers. Did anyone miss anything with the 2 pointers quickly? We're good? Is my mic working? Am I muted? Okay. For 33, did I do this one right? Okay. So you need an equation for company A and an equation for company B. And I'm going to change something actually because this is going to mess people up. I'm going to do this. Okay. So I'll explain. So it's kind of straightforward. There's no tricks here. There's no adjustments. We talk about adjustments sometimes, like, oh, do this, X minus 3. So, no, this was pretty straight up. $50, $5 a shirt, $25, $6 a shirt. Pretty easy. Now it says, when will company A be cheaper? So a good strategy might be to figure out when they'll be the exact same, and then just to add 1 to that. Because obviously here, the problem is like company A has a bigger initial expense, but it is cheaper for every shirt. So once they're the same amount, it logically follows that company A is going to lead from there, right? Company A is more expensive at first. It's like 2 lines going like this. Company A is more expensive at first. They have the same amount somewhere, and then it's going to be cheaper from that intersection. So the answer is 26. Okay? I wrote there, I initially made it an inequality, which you also could have done. 25, if you wrote 25 shirts, that would be them having the exact same cost. So 26 is where A will start to win. Where when I say win, like it will start to be cheaper. This one was a little interesting. Let me go over the points for this, and feel free, guys, to ask questions. Let me go over some point possibilities. Point possibilities. So 4, if you have something like what I have. Inequality-wise, you could have said, like, you know, X is greater than 25, and then it becomes 26. If you wrote 25 shirts, you get a 3 out of 4. So if you have the equations up top, you did some process, but you wrote 25, 3 out of 4. Oh, okay. I didn't catch this myself. Did I do it? Yeah, okay. I didn't mess it up. If you wrote, I'm looking through one of the models, they had a kid that wrote like y equals and y equals. Double check this. This is something we talk about in class. If you wrote y equals and y equals, which is like pretty common, you know, using y and x, they're taking off for that. Remember, what do I always say? Like, if they tell you to call something, you got to use that thing. That's a very specific sentence, but you know what I mean? Like, if they're saying, hey, use this for B, call it B, and call this one A, you got to use that. They give an example of saying y equals, and they're taking off for that. So double check. If you wrote y equals instead of A equals or B equals, you're losing off. Something, use that thing. Yeah. Okay, double check that. Look, give yourself, if you thought you were giving yourself a 4 out of 4, but you wrote y equals, take off a point for that. Yeah, they keep mentioning that. Okay, kind of think of it as like 2 and 2. So if you got some weird mistakes, like, all right, I had the equations, but I had nothing going up top on the bottom, maybe a 2 out of 4. That's fine. Yeah, Rachel, that's fine. If you wrote company and then A equals, that's fine. Austin's left the meeting. Okay, so this was out of 4. Again, kind of, it doesn't exactly work this way. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but kind of think of it like this. Again, total was out of 4. Were we supposed to do this? This was the mock Regents, Kyle. Good morning. Okay, for number 34, we have a system. What are some little things with this? We should all know this. Now, technically, if you notice, like I don't have any work, but I would still recommend showing a table. So I would show a table for f of x, but if you didn't, you don't lose points. So labeling, check your labels. You can just write f of x and g of x. That's fine. Now, there's a little trick at the bottom before I go and kind of reveal it. What's the trick at the bottom? What does it say about the solution set? Yeah, just the x values. Just the x values. What are the x values where the functions are equal to each other? So if you wrote the coordinates, -1. You wrote the coordinates -1. So just the x values would be x equals 0 and x equals 3, I believe, right? Labeling -1 if you forgot. Let me go through the keys for this first. So if you didn't, I don't know why anyone would do this, but if you didn't put arrows on your graph and you kind of just stop them randomly, -1. If you wrote coordinates, -1. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. So the whole thing's worth 4. In the grand scheme of 4-point questions, this is a pretty nice one. I mean, graphing a quad and graphing a line, we could use a table of values. Like, this isn't too crazy. Okay, questions with that? Are people like here? Is it just Brandon and Kyle in this week? Okay. 35, this is a layup. We said this during the stat test. This is a layup. Lin reg, this is all just typing into your calculator. Type into your calc, lin reg, L1, L2, stat calc, lin reg, write it down right. Make sure you're rounding right. Don't make a rounding error. Correlation coefficient. Now, double check what you wrote. Double check what you wrote. If you just wrote, it's a strong correlation, -1. What's the phrasing with the last bullet point? Context of the problem. And all you have to do is just say, mention the variables. Oh, there's a strong relationship. There's a strong correlation between studying and test scores. So if you just wrote strong correlation, -1. You made a decimal mistake up top, -1. Go ahead.
Isn't there like a setting that we have to do, or like
Nope.
on the calculator to access this stuff?
Yes. So that's mode and stat diagnostics. You want to make sure is on. When you guys come in to take the Regents, you're going to be given a school calculator, and diagnostics should be on. We'll double check that, but usually the teachers all sit like the day before. All the math teachers help out. And we, make sure they're all set up and ready to go. But just do it just in case. You should know that, like, as you're sitting, you know how you kind of like sit for a few minutes and they're going over instructions. Just double check that. Mode, stat diagnostics should be on. Yesterday's homework, I just posted the solutions for it. If you have a question, you could ask on that. Yeah, not during this. Yep, I'll be in the building. Okay. So again, 4-point question, kind of like, this is weird because it's 3 parts and it's 4 points. It doesn't add up exactly, but you kind of figure out. If you're like, oh, I wrote 7.78, that's the only mistake. Like, take away 1. I don't know how you really mess up this part. And again, make sure you mention the variables because it did say context of the problem. Context of the problem. Okay. Ooh, this one was good. So this one, you didn't have to graph the system of inequalities. They wanted to know what were the inequalities featured. So what should you do? I know I just wrote my answer, but what I would recommend doing is like writing down the 4 pieces of information. For example, if I was doing the grayish one, like this one over here, if I was doing that one, I'm going to sit and write down like M, B, it's obviously shaded below, and it's solid. Make like a little list of all these things. So B happens where? -2. What's the slope? It looks like it goes up 2/1. Now it's a lot easier to put all those things together just looking at that. And these should be your 2 inequalities. Y is less than or equal to 2x minus 2, and y is less than -3x plus 3. Now, what does the next part says? What does region A represent? What did you guys say for that? What does region A represent? What was your phrasing for that? You just wrote the word solutions? Yes, the solution set for the system, maybe, or something, I would say. the solution set for the system is what I wrote. All right. A is where we would usually put like the letter S. It means like the points, the area where both inequalities are satisfied. If you just wrote solution set, let me double check that. It's a little vague because technically I would be like, oh, what about the other lines? What about the gray? What? Let me just double check that. Solution to the system, they wrote. Solution to the system. Yeah, be careful. Hold on. Most of the models that I'm looking at, you wanted to reference the fact that it was a solution set for the system, not just if you wrote solution set, might be a little too vague. So be careful about that. Now in the next part, this is why writing solution, because they're gonna be like, okay, what's the difference between part 2 and part 3 then? What does the entire gray represent? The entire gray is just the solution to that top inequality. Those are just the points that satisfy, you know, the 2x minus 2. The A portion is where both the overlapping lines, and like they actually colored in here, overlap, and that's what A is, that region. So if you just wrote solution and solution, like you were a little too vague. Okay, region A is the solution set for the system. The entire gray area is the solution just to one of the inequalities, just satisfies one of the inequalities. Questions with this one? Anyone have a mistake and they want to try to break it down? This one was confusing, I remember. If you wrote equations for some weird reason instead of inequalities, they gave you a 3 out of 4, which is kind of generous. What was that? If you just wrote one correct inequality and messed everything else up, you can get a 1 out of 4. That's messing everything up. Any scoring questions with this one? All right, and last one. This was a pretty easy, question 37. It was a system, no trick. This is like a straight up system, which is pretty nice. My 8th graders this year kind of liked this question. Like, it was an easy system. Okay, you had to create the system. 4c plus 3f equals 1653. 5c plus 4, 2111. Okay, 2 points right there. If you got that, you already have a 2 out of 6. Now they give you one of these. These are always kind of silly to me because you know the answer is no. Because like, look at the next part. It says solve it. So are they correct? Plug it in. It does say justify, going back to what Rachel asked earlier. I don't want to just put no period. So justify, I'm showing no, 2393 does not equal 2111. I could write that out in words, or I just showed like, I put the equal sign with the slash through it. So no, they're incorrect. And this is probably a good elimination one. I wouldn't recommend using substitution. No variables are pretty close to being solved for. I chose to eliminate C. You very easily could have eliminated F by using like 12 and 12. I did 20 and -20 for C. Fries and a cheeseburger. Fries are $1.79. A cheeseburger is $2.79. That was it. This was a pretty easy 37. So 6-point question. Let's go over the breakdown of this. So if you have what I have, 6 out of 6. Let's see if there's any weird scoring things. It's kind of hard to get a 5. Someone made a mistake like writing the equation. Like instead of 2111, they wrote 21 up top. So just like a transcriptional error. So to get a 4, basically an error with elimination. So again, I think sometimes you guys are used to being like, oh, I got it wrong, so I got a 0 out of 6 just because you got fries or $1.80 or something. Kind of treat it like this. Let's say 222, not exactly, but kind of like that. If you just had the system alone, 2 out of 6, which, I mean, you should know how to solve a system at this point in the year. Even the middle part is just a matter of plugging in and checking. And then using elimination. So maybe like if you made some mistake in your elimination, it could even be like a 4 out of 6. Like, hey, I messed up. Oh, I added them and I got this or that. It'd still be a 4 out of 6. I didn't include. If you didn't put, that's a good question, Sarah. I don't know if you need, like, you didn't put the $sign. Let's see. I don't know. Okay, no, that doesn't matter. If you just wrote 2, I'm looking at it in the model, they have one. The person wrote 2.79. So if you didn't put the $sign, they don't take off for that. If you don't put the $sign, they didn't take off. Okay, cool. Did anyone miss anything 1 through 24 or anything in the written? I mean, 1 through 24 you should have from the email from me, and we went over it. Anything in the written? Probably Mr. Smith or another teacher. Miss Lee, Mr. Sesa. Okay. So what I want to show you guys, we'll take a minute. If you've been kind of hanging with me, maybe you've just been paying attention to the questions, but if you actually been kind of scoring yourself, I want to show you guys the breakdown. You can maybe start adding up what you got. If anyone did get a perfect score, it should add up to 86. Doesn't add up to 100. We've talked about this. Okay. I just want to show you guys this. This is what I was looking at. I can obviously show you my iPad and this at the same time. But these are model responses. This is what the teachers get. Obviously, like, we know the answer to this one is 8, but what happens is we have all these different variations. Like, oh, they did this. Like, I keep getting 1/2, so that's a 1 out of 2. It's just like, hey, some common mistakes and how to score them. Like this kid. That guy's a 2? What? 30? Yeah. So like this kid wrote the square root of 36 for that one that was plus or minus 6. I don't know who would do that, but 1 out of 2. So it's just kind of nice to see what gets what. All right, but more importantly, I want to show you this, the conversion chart. Is there correction on this one? No. So if you tally it up and sit and do it, so I can't read my iPad anymore, but whatever you got on the multiple choice, multiply by 2. So if you got 22 points on the multiple choice, 22 right out of 24, you got 44 points. For the rest of the questions, we've been saying +2, +2, there's +4s, and then the very last one is +6. Take a minute maybe to add them all up. And whatever your total is your raw score. Your raw score. So for example, let's just say someone maybe like you just did the multiple choice and you got a 24 out of 24 and you didn't do any written questions for whatever reason. You're already at a 48 on the raw score, which means you already have a 79. So if you get a perfect score on the multiple choice on this year, they change it slightly every year, you already have a 79 on the test without doing a single written question. Miss Lee, there's a math teacher, Miss Lee. She's a 7th grade math teacher. Not Miss Lee, the English teacher. If you guys have a really good memory, like the first day of school, me, her, and Mr. Sesa did like a Google Meet for the whole 7th grade. Does anyone remember that? Because we're like the 7th grade math teachers. Okay. There's only 3 7th grade math teachers. Okay. Is anyone adding up here? Hopefully no one's in the right column. Or even the middle column. What amount of question? It depends, Nolan. So 65 is where? 65 is 27 raw points. So that's about 13 multiple choice, 14 multiple choice, because that's 28. So if you get 14 multiple choice and nothing else on the entire test, you get a 66. You guys got 724 wrong. What did we do with 724? I don't remember that. I forgot they were G and T. I don't remember that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I did mess that up. Because in the past, G and T was just 22 and 23. Like, it's rare to have 3 of them. Any questions with scoring? Has anyone tallied up? The levels, yeah, ignore the levels, Lucas. Those don't really mean anything. 85 is kind of a key number. I know most of you guys are probably like maybe 90 and above or something. But 85 is an important number to benchmark there. 68 raw points. 85 and above is considered mastery level. So you're going to end up taking a bunch of Regents, through middle school and high school. If you get 85 and above on all of them, you get like an advanced Regents diploma. It's considered like mastery level, getting an 85 and above. Kyle, have you been paying attention, my man? So there's 8 2-point questions in written. There's 4 4-point questions, and then there's 1 6-point question. You should kind of know that by now. We just said the last question was out of 6. Okay. That was multiple choice. The multiple choice are 2 points each. Multiple choice are 2 points each. So I said if you got 24 right, you got 48 points. Any questions with scoring? Did anyone tally up what they got? Ethan has like a doll on his camera. Did you forget your mic was on, Ethan? If we get all the multiple right, that's a guaranteed mastery. So if you get all the multiple choice right, Lucas, that would be 48 points. That would be 79. So you're close. It's hard to get a 0 on every written question. You really have to like almost leave the whole test blank. I would, in some ways, I think the multiple choice is more difficult. I know that sounds weird, but at least written, you have this option of like, all right, I probably didn't get this exactly right, but I'm going to get a 3 out of 4. Whereas multiple choice, you could like know how to do it and you just circle the wrong one, or there's like a little trick in there and then you end up getting a 0. So in some ways, multiple choice is, a little bit more evil. Multiple choice, you can guess. Yeah, maybe you get lucky. You got a 25% chance. Yeah, it's true. True. There shouldn't be anything that you don't know. They're not going to take the test and be like, whoa, we never learned this. You've learned everything you need to know. You might just not know like what tool to grab, like which, what method to solve it with, but you've learned everything you need to know. This is just for math. Yeah, this is not the science. I don't know what that's out of. And they change this every year. Notice it just says 2019. Mr. Rice, how much to do my science? Are we allowed to bring our own? What is this, like science questions? A diamond has the hardest number on the scale, Mohs hardness scale. That's all I remember. Sulfur smells like rotten eggs, and I don't really remember a lot from earth science. I don't know. Weather is in the troposphere. Are all these things right? Is someone like fact checking me here? Okay. Yeah, I was good in science. Okay. Any other questions? We're kind of done early today. We're usually running low on time. What's up, John? Yeah, just pencils. I would bring a pen just in case. Sometimes they'll say like bubble it in a pen or something, but to be honest, I usually tell people just to use pencil. Bring pen and pencils. Don't bring your own calculator. Do not bring your own calculator because you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to put it under your chair, and then you're going to forget it, and then you've lost your calculator. So don't bring your own. Well, you could bring it. It's just going to be taken from you, and then, like I said, it could be lost. What's the linear regression usage? like how to do it, Lucas. That's hitting stat, hit stat, enter for edit. Under L1 and L2, you type in your X and Y values. Make sure those are all good, and then hit stat again. Scroll to the right for calc, and you should see linreg. Do we get to leave after that? I'm not sure, because it is an AM Regents. If it was an afternoon Regents, it would be like 2 o'clock, but I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. It might be like the state tests where like they'll do form permission slips or something, but that I'm not sure. Lucas, are you talking about a specific question? I don't know what values you use. It depends on like what question you're answering. I don't know what question you're working on. You would type in the X and Y values under L1 and L2. Or look on my YouTube channel, Lucas. I have a video on that called linear regression. It's hard to explain how to use a calculator like just through words. All right. So we have tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow and Thursday. I might see if we could squeeze. Technically, that's all that was on the calendar, but we could always squeeze in something maybe next week if needed. We'll kind of pick up tomorrow again with doing I kind of like doing these separate as like an actual Regents, and in class doing as kind of like, and you know what? Let's do this while we have some time, because Studi asked for this earlier. We have time. The thing, the packet. So I did post these. I know we didn't get to explain them, but let's just take a quick look. More so I'm looking at like the graph here. So this was a piecewise system. And I did give something like this a few years ago. So I added this to my packet. I always like kind of change a few things here, there, and this. I made this a few years ago, but I edited it. With piecewise, remember we make the little mini tables. You can't cheat with a quadratic. So you're gonna have to put a few values. Include a number whether it's included or not. 0 is in my linear table, even though 0, it says x has to be greater than 0. I just use an open circle there. And you could do all this work. You could forget to label a -1, and then look at the bottom. It doesn't even want to know where they hit. It just says, hey, how many times do they intersect? Twice. The graph intersects twice. They hit twice. However you want to phrase that. Okay. The domain and range one, domain x values, range y values. What's the domain if you throw a ball off your roof? 0 to 5. 0, that's when time starts. 5, that's when the event ends. It hits the ground at 5 seconds, so it can't continue on any further. If I give you a restricted domain, plug in the endpoints to find the corresponding y values that go with those. So like plug in a -2, plug in a 5. I also put a little arrow here. It goes from -23 to 19. You wouldn't say like 19 to -23. And then domain and range, I like to have like a little sketch of the graph. So this is what it looks like. 2 to the right, 5 up. So the domain is 2 to infinity. The range is 5 to infinity, inclusive of both. And then the AROC questions. AROC, you're doing basically slope. So from 5 to 12, evaluate 5 and 12. The change in x is going to be 7. You need the y values to get the change in y there. It's about 6.8. For the square root function, plug in a 5, plug in a 12. The difference there is 2.6 divided by 7 is about 0.4. And the last one, right from the table, find the AROC between 0 and 4. Just use 0, just use 4. The change in x is 4. The change in y is -21. So -5 and 1/4. I didn't show you a week ago when we did topic 13. Wait, hold on. What was topic 13? Oh, what do you think? I'm stupid, man? You think I was born out last night? I almost fell for that. I was gonna say, because we go over it we either go over it or I post it. I always forget the number. I don't know why. Maybe next year I'll remember to do it. Like topic 1 will be what we do the first day. Topic 2 will be what we do the second day. They're kind of in random order, so it's annoying to keep track of. All right, guys, that's for a lot of deliveries here. That's 4 o'clock. Any questions with anything? I might teach 8th grade next year. We don't always know. So for like 7A, how do you have to put the greater than or equal to? Where's 7A? 7A. Less than or equal to and less than or equal to. Yeah, because it can equal 0 and it can equal 5. It starts at 0 seconds, it ends at 5 seconds. So you would put bracket 0, comma 5 bracket. Gia, do you want to make any closing comments? For CTS, A, yeah. So if A is not 1, you would divide it out. Yeah, my wife reads the chat sometimes, and she's wondering what's going on. Okay. No, she's not home. All right, guys, everyone have a good day. Bye.